The next session really goes into blocking and tackling. I have known Mukesh Bansal for a long time now, 10 years, 15 years, I don't remember, maybe 15 years, Mukesh. So his journey as both founder of Myntra and Cult, we were there from sort of the idea seed stage, and what stood out for me always is, like with all founders, Mukesh's ability to see ahead and hone in on consumer trends. And I know in 2008, if you said, I am going to do a fashion e-commerce company, or I'm going to do a health tech company in 2015-16 time period. And both of these, by the way, I don't know if Mukesh would agree or not, I think he didn't necessarily come from a deep domain of those domains, but had a deep passion and could see where the consumer trends were, and then based on that create consumer experience that was unparalleled from what existed, and then meticulously plan out and execute that experience at scale. So having created some much loved consumer brands like Cult and Myntra, it's been an exceptional journey, very proud of him as a founder. Like many founders, he I think moved from, like many early founders in India, moved from Bay Area to, moved from Bay Area to Bangalore. Yes. I know it's afternoon, but I think I'm slow. But Mukesh, come on in. And I also want to invite Gaurav and his journey. BlueStone is fine jewelry online. And now, Mukesh, come on. So any seat you want. So depending on the seat, you may have to moderate. So, but in one word, when I think about Gaurav, the word that comes to me is perseverance. And I think over the last decade, and at various points there were naysayers to whether you can actually build this business, and whether Indian consumer with their traditional relationship with jewelry, which most of you understand, that you can actually build this, and the dedication and the grit and conviction with which he has built a fabulous business really translates into the scale and the trust that he has built, and again proven that always founders have a vision far ahead most of the time to the rest of the world, and if we are lucky as venture capitalists, somewhere we get to follow them. So I'm gonna want to have both of them talk about, we have mics, right? So talk about really what can you expect from this phenomenal growth with both Arvindji and Mr. Vishwanathan. Nobody could have articulated it better. But the first question for both of you is, you disrupted what is considered traditional businesses, right? And Mukesh, you in fashion, and then in much loved wellness with Cult, and Gaurav, of course, in traditional jewelry by creating very trusted brands that both of you have done, right? So I don't know what gave you the conviction that you can start up in a traditional business, and where there are incumbents and mature players, that goes against the fact that you can do a new company in a mature market, right? So this is not about new IP, new algorithm. What gave you the conviction to say we can do this? Mukesh, will start with you.
Vani, first of all, thank you for inviting me, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I think I, in some ways, started my career in Silicon Valley. Attempted to be an entrepreneur multiple times, didn't work, so I thought I'll go back to India and try my luck there. Eventually, it worked out. I think in retrospect, we can use probably more sophisticated language to describe, but as an early stage entrepreneur, you don't have those mental models or concepts. But I think Vani, the courage in some ways, more intuitively comes from what we may call now like very sharp insight. Now, it might not have been insight at that time. So for me, the Myntra journey was somewhat accidental. And one, as you know, earlier we were, trying various different things, personalization, this, that. But at some point, visiting some of the early malls in India, I happened to be one of the malls in Pune. And so in Myntra, after 3 years into the journey, nothing was really working. Somehow investors were still backing us, so we were in the game, trying different things. And I used to go to these malls in different parts of the country. Usually, I'll take a morning flight on Wednesday, Thursday, land up there, visit in the afternoon. The malls were deserted. And one such mall in Pune, I realized that every floor is just filled with, all this apparel, footwear, accessories, and not a single customer. So I was pretty much literally the only guy, wandering around the mall in the afternoon. And, by that time we were in e-commerce, we were selling stuff online. And you kind of, put two and two together. And if all this stuff is online, it just makes, everyone's life so much easier from supply point of view. Similarly, later on in 2016, a lot of people will talk about health. Everyone wants to be healthy, but really no place to go to. There is no quality player. So I think just finding this insight and then having, that little bit of probably experience in Silicon Valley helped, that you build a business around a good insight, then it's just a matter of execution from there on. You know that this insight is real, you solve the problem in a highly differentiated manner, the consumers will come. I think, that requires some patience, perseverance, which I think, hard knocks in Valley probably taught me, and I was prepared to do that, and, things turned out well.
So what gave you this conviction, right?
Hello. Thanks, Mani, for having us here. And like Mukesh, this is also not my first startup. My first startup was Shakpat. In fact, those were the days when, so I've known Mukesh since that time. And we always struggling. I think India was a small market and so on. I sold that to Flipkart, moved out of it. And in 2011, when I was looking at a lot of spaces, I came across jewelry. And it was a very new space for me. I had never entered a jewelry store before that. I was not married. So never had the need to enter a jewelry store.
I think there are many married men who probably haven't entered a jewelry store still, but...
Yes. The major challenge for us in our stores is to actually keep men occupied, because they otherwise drag the women out. So I looked at the space, I looked at the market, and I was looking at a lot of categories since e-commerce was generally booming in the country. And realized that this is the category which generally no one looks at. It was so traditional, it was so out of radar for all the institutional investors, for almost everyone, that it was... And I looked at the space also, so it was largely unorganized. I think maybe 8-10% of that was with the organized players. The biggest organized player at that time was also $2 billion in market cap, with just 2 to 3% in market share. Now that player right now is $40 billion market cap and 6% market share, still growing at 20% per annum and slated to grow at 20% per annum for next 15 to 20 years. That's how huge the opportunity was. And I think the biggest question in the mind was that what kind of a role will technology play, what kind of a role will internet play in this category? And there I think we had a top-down belief that irrespective of category or irrespective of what exactly is the role, internet and tech is definitely going to play one way, some role one way or the other, and it has done that across it. So you look at books, you look at music, you look at the way people are buying their cars, you look at the way people are flying or booking their tickets, etc. So no matter what the category, there's some role, big or small, that the internet plays. And I think with that belief we started, and with that, and then approached the problem that when over time we realized that there are a couple of things which internet is doing very, very beautifully in this particular category. And I think one of the biggest pain points that I saw, and we are an omni-channel player right now. We started as an online-only brand, and in 2018 started rolling out stores also, and omni-channel was where we found the real value add. And we realized that most of the consumers over the last 20 to 30 years have actually moved on from buying first behavior to a browse first behavior. Like from small format stores where a person, or let's say my dad would go 30 years back just to buy a shirt. He would never go to check out shirts. Right? It would just be buying and over-the-counter experience, no eyes. Merchandise would be on the other side of the counter. So from that, the experience moved to large format stores, where the salesman was not in front of you but behind you as a helper. And those counters were replaced by aisles. The merchandise was on both sides, and you could browse as much as you want without anyone forcing you to buy or asking you or pressurizing you to buy. And then came the e-commerce, which actually made those aisles endless, and the browsing continues from weekend browsing. It became week-long browsing. And with TikTok and so on, it has become snackable browsing. Every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, is browsing. Now, in case of jewelry, none of that happened because the stores remained same as how those used to be 20 years back. That's the nature of the merchandise. It's not very easy to actually lay it in aisles where you can yourself look at that. But the consumers have moved. So when it came to browsing, online started beating offline hands down. So otherwise, jewelry as a purchase is something that a woman would do only once or twice a year. But that does not mean she should not engage with the category more often than that. So now women can actually spend 20 days, 30 days, many hours actually looking at 3,000 ring designs without anyone forcing them to actually shortlist something or anyone offering them tea, coffee, cold drink, which is all pressure tactics. So I think what we are seeing, the behavior that we are seeing is in order to consume a category, you should not be forced to buy it. And that consumption is happening online. And given the nature of the category, given the price points, given the fear in the category, stores play a tremendous or a pivotal role in converting that into business. So that broadly is the business. So for men, a very similar example is buying a car. If you're thinking of buying a car, you're not going to go into a dealership right away. You will to spend your next 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks researching online. Make up your mind, shortlist 2 or 3 models, 4 models maybe, and then walk into offline. So that is the sweet spot, Vani, that we found in this particular category.
I remember, investing into Myntra and of course Cult. But what convinced me to make that leap and investment was really the vastly superior customer experience that they were targeting and delivering, and experiencing that as a consumer first is what was convincing. And with Gaurav, I think he sent me, I still remember, he may not remember, to Mumbai to see the back-end manufacturing of what they had done from jewelry, and it was really fascinating how they had optimized the supply chain and also the whole turnaround concept of made to order, which if you're going to have endless browsing, then you also have to create the back end to match that. You can't have your traditional back end and then match the endless browsing with a large catalog that you create and keep inventory. Obviously, everybody here understands how inventory turn works from working capital requirements, and that's what they optimize. The reason I say this is, we think about D2C brands, but the way I saw both of you, oftentimes board meetings would be around technology and efficiencies and supply chain, and of course about branding too, but in of itself, which is probably the advantage of someone who comes from the domain, but the advantage both of you had was how you leveraged technology to create newer experience or newer efficiency. So the question is, imagining this disruption by leveraging technology, and then how do you see that playing out over the next decade for the many plethora of new brands that have opportunity to reset in India?
Sure. So in our case also, since we had no prior experience in jewelry, and not just me, the entire team, no one in the team had prior experience in the jewelry. So for everything for us was a problem statement, and then there would be a discovery process as to what is the best solution. Now many a times we would end up discovering the same solution that the industry might already know. But I think the biggest advantage was that we already had a fresh perspective to many of the things that people would just take for granted. And people would say that this is how this needs to be done. And many of the people over time forget why this is how it should be done, right? So that why is how we always approached it. So I think a lot of these things, you touched upon one of those things, but let me just go sequentially. So I think one of the biggest pain points that we first saw was when we tried to present jewelry online, digitally. Now the nature of the product, it's these, we are into gold and diamond jewelry, right? So it's very shiny, very glossy objects. Gold reflects the light, diamond refracts the light. It's just how do you photograph such a product? How do you photograph such a product beautifully? And this is not a specification-driven product. This is unless a woman actually truly falls in love with that particular design, she's not going to buy it. In a way, we were in the business of selling a photo, not the product. What you would eventually get would be a physical manifestation of that, but the whole love needs to be generated on that. We looked around and we did few iterations of photographs. This was so highly photoshopped. It was just not coming through. So it's like, how do you take a very beautiful photo of a mirror? You can't. Right? A minor dent in the mirror would be visible. And in this case, since you're photographing it at 20x zoom, 10x zoom, a minor scratch, minor dent would actually make it appear very bad. So we were the first ones in the world to use 3D rendering to showcase our jewelry. And this was back in the days, in 2012 itself. In fact, we delayed our launch by around 3 months, saying that, okay, we can't launch with ugly looking products. The products have to look very beautiful. And in 3 to 4 months, we mastered 3D rendering of that. And till date, we actually remain the best renderer of jewelry in the world, not only in the country. Be it Tiffany, be it Cartier, no one displays jewelry digitally as beautifully as we do. In those early days, some of the investors came back to me that now you're showcasing it so beautifully. Will we even make it? So I said, fine, we'll know from our return rate, and then we'll know what problem to solve. And then the whole working capital problem, as we started expanding more and more choices, we realized that our sales throughputs are not so that we can actually stock so much. We started working with some of the existing manufacturers. They were not ready for it. So their delivery timelines were 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and so on. The reliability was less. In our case, when we collect an order, we generally, in our category is a lot of nuances. In fact, SAP, Oracle, nothing works in our category. So all the tech is in-house. It had to be in-house. And I'll give you a very small example. So in our case, in the made-to-order model that we established, we would actually, at the time of selling itself, I would say that this would contain 6.3 grams of gold and 40 cents of diamond. Now, if I end up making it in 8.3 grams of gold, I can't go back to the customer and ask for that 2 gram more. And if I make it in 4.3, then the customer would say, my budget was 60,000, I don't want a 40,000 rupee ring. 60,000 was what I wanted to buy for. So a lot of these problems, and the existing supply chain was just not geared for that. And ours would probably be the only category where every inventory item, specification and price is different from the catalog item. And it also changes after 3 days with gold rate. So just very, very, very tricky. And all those things were kind of developed in-house over time, and all that is what gives strength. We ended up creating our own factories. Right now we have 4 different factories in 3 different cities. Everything is made to order. So from the time of placing the order in a factory or purchase order in the factory to manufacturing, it takes not more than 4 to 5 days. And within plus minus 4% of that specification. And all that feeds back into the catalog specifications. All this tech, all these operational expertise, everything kind of was built over time. And this is what powers a lot of the growth that we are actually producing.
Right?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think one, if you look at 3 companies that Gaurav and I are representing, we were ranked outsiders in those industry, which is somewhat of a disadvantage, but also a massive advantage because you get to question nearly everything. I think I realized very early on in my Myntra journey that we obviously need domain expert to teach us about the domain, but the domain experience also comes with, in some way, a lot of baggage of things which might have worked 10, 20, 30 years ago, but not relevant anymore. So I think at some point I realized that we want a lot more of people who are first principles thinkers, who can learn domain, but bring this digital way of thinking, technology way of thinking, and data way of thinking. I think leveraging technology, I think, has helped in 2-3 big ways. First and foremost is personalization. If you think, go back 10, 12 years ago, there is really no concept of personalization in pretty much any category. You have just stock, product and service. You like it, you buy or go back. But leveraging a lot of data, what different people are doing, being able to segment them at a very, very granular level. India is, one country, but so many regional, diversity in pretty much everything. Leveraging technology, you can do justice to all those varying, tastes, preferences, logistic requirement and so on. Also scale, technology, it gives you, massive scalability. Today in our cult business, we have, on peak days, we get 150,000 people. 150,000 people, we run close to 3,500 classes every single day. Now, orchestrating all of that, without technology is not possible. So if you look at any other traditional gym chain, they might sell some franchise, etc., run some gyms, but really no leverage, no way to maintain quality, standardization. We have, all our 600 gyms. We have, on average, 8 cameras. So we have literally, 8 times 600, that close to 5,000 live feed available throughout the day. The kind of things we can do with that video is just, this is limited by imagination, and I think AI is also catching up now, so we can do a lot more intelligence analytics. So all these things, give so much leverage to people who are able to come to domain outside. It obviously requires some patience, some learning curve, and then apply power of technology to dramatically change either in the consumer end, where the experience is so much better that the existing players can't offer, or you bring huge economies of scale at the back end side. Both I think creates so much opportunity to really, really differentiate and build, which is what we've seen category after category. I think you look at all the leading players, I will be hard pressed to think, who is, Piyush at Lenskart is not from, IT background, or Bhavish is not from, car background or whatever, right? So I think, this first principle thinking and leveraging power of technology, I think is enormously powerful.
There is a notion, and maybe many of you also believe this, that building a consumer brand company burns a lot of money and hence perhaps is not easily VC investable, right? And there are probably a lot of investors, potential investors, angel investors, institutions. So is this a VC investable business long term? I mean, are you exceptions? Or, can we actually build this as a consistent model?
Well, first of all, I'll take this since I've earned more money than you, Gaurav. So, I mean, look, in India, I think last 15 years, consumers companies have burned incredible amount of money, right? If you add that up. So I think a lot of money has gone into, in some ways, the market creation, building the whole infrastructure, infrastructure both in front end. Today we can talk about 500 million people on the internet or 200 million people shopping. But back in 2007, at some point I realized there may be 500,000 people who can buy something online, right? So from there to now, it's an incredible scale that has happened. So a lot of, all the tens of billions of various e-commerce companies and so on have, have raised. So VCs, PE, sovereign funds, they've all contributed to creation of ecosystem. But I think Gaurav briefly alluded to that. The category leaders now have 20 years of 20% annual compounding. And I think if you go with the math that you did, I think a lot of that math is the power of compounding. And these category leaders, you pick any category, today I can close my eyes and I can, bet on his business that he'll grow 15-20% for next 20 years. And we can all do, calculation, the calculator, or same for my company, Cult, he'll grow 15-20% for 20 years. Nothing can stop it. So I think the long-term returns of the investment that has happened in the past, I think it's incredible. Having said that, today, it's a very different environment. It's a very, very sophisticated ecosystem. I think people can build consumer brands in a highly efficient manner. If I have to build a brand today, I will probably not take more than 3 years to be profitable. Like, there is absolutely no need to. There are so many different channels available. You need to obviously segment things smartly, target right on customers, to understand where you can get profit, right CAC LTV ratio and so on, right leverage, using technology for differentiation and so on. But I think so, yeah, so it's both sides. I think in the past, we have taken a lot of money because it has gone into creation of this whole ecosystem. But today, I think people are able to build business in ultra lean, efficient manner.
Yeah, so on consumer brands front, I think largely the way I see it, so first wave of brands were the ones which are like service provider brands, like Flipkart, Myntra, etc. For that matter, Ola, Taxi for Sure, etc. And those in that particular, and the second category is D2C brands, which is what we are seeing a plethora of coming. So in the first category is typically a infrastructure play, and hence it has the characteristics of a winner take all kind of a market, and hence a lot of competition, a lot of people would want to actually win that market at whatever cost. And once they win it, it'll grow at a very good, very strong pace over time. But more interesting is the second part of it, which is a D2C brand, which is where we largely fall, where Lenskart, a lot of new companies like Sugar, Mamaearth, etc. fall, or both also. If you look at a lot of these companies actually burnt a lot less cash. Now, because in their case, the differentiation also lies in product. The differentiation also lies in the way they do marketing. Because marketing for them is not just, let's say, paid ads for the intent which is already generated. They need to actually create long-term association with their products and their brands. The differentiation also lies in the way they establish their distribution, right? So a lot of the, let's say, compared to, let's say, Flipkart and Snapdeal or Amazon, with the differentiation, you would not find that much differentiation between several people providing the same service. So I think now that Flipkart is there, Amazon is there, Myntra is there, and so on, now the time is ripe to create a lot of these D2C brands, and which is the new wave that we are seeing. And I think the consumer brands, which are also product brands, would require a lot less cash, but they would require a lot stronger clarity of purpose, a lot stronger or a lot sharper differentiation.
We talked about investments, and I want to talk about returns. First of all, I'm proud of the scale that both of you have built, and very grateful that we had an opportunity to be part of that journey, which was immensely insightful and learning for me, but obviously also enabled Kalaari to return back incredible capital to our LPs. But the question I want to ask you is, what I've observed is there is the first phase that could be 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, but something like that, from the idea to reasonable value creation. But the second phase, after you have the go-to-market and growth established, the second phase has been, in fact, incredibly explosive from value generation and value creation. I've seen that with both of you. Had we chosen to sell our shareholding, let's say, 2 years ago in BlueStone versus 2 years hence, it could be a 10x difference, right, in value, and that's what we have seen. So the longevity of holding matters, at least so far, right? And that's where also people sometimes give up to say this isn't happening soon enough, which is where sometimes venture capital has an advantage, and hedge fund capital doesn't have the advantage in India specifically, right? Would love to get your comment.
Yeah, I think, see, the lot of venture industry, was obviously created here, and the business is very heavily technology business. Technology has this ability, once you hit the inflection point, you can keep growing 3-4x, every year. Like, look at what happened to Nvidia last 2 years. India, most of the businesses we are building, they are infrastructure heavy. I mean, BlueStone has built, so many offline stores. So it will be at Cult, and a majority of companies, these are not pure tech plays, which means at maturity, they grow at 30, 40, maybe 50%, but for a very long period of time. So I think Silicon Valley, you can go from 0 to 100 in 5 years, and therefore, the return period can be small, 5-7 years. India, if you take 10 to 15 year horizon, I think that's a real value creation. I mean, last 5-6 years, I also play investor hat now, or if you my equity in Purefield, I want to hold for 20 or 30 years, because, I just last couple of years, I was doing this calculation. I looked at pretty much all the companies that have created significant value in India. More than 90% of their value creation is in second decade of existence. The first decade is all about building the product, finding differentiator, and finding your feet, and setting yourself up, finding, among the top 2-3 players, and then let this compounding play out for you. So that's something, understand the funds have limited life cycle. At some point, maybe, to transition to later stage fund. But I think most business in India, and I'll just put a caveat, I think it's going to change now. We have got because of digital public infrastructure, and so I think there are opportunities for genuine pure tech play, and there the holding period and value creation 5-7 years can be humongous, but large majority of business in India, I think, will require 10 to 20 year horizons.
So I agree, Mukesh. So basically things that used to take, so that initial 5-7 years used to be a discovery period. That was the case with Myntra also, that was the case with BlueStone also, in my previous company as well. So I think to some extent that period will also get shortened, because there are lots of learnings and lot of these infrastructures which are in place. But the thing about India is just does not stop. The population is so much, the transformation that is happening is and there's so much still left to actually to still be built. So, and I'll give you another example of Tanish, which is the leader in my category. Tanish started in 1994. And I think by 2008 or 2009 or maybe 2010, they became $1 billion company. Right now, they're a $40 billion company. Right? And Mr. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala, he's known in India as Warren Buffett of India because of his investment in Tanish. He foresaw this. That
He got lucky.
Maybe. Okay, but there was something that happened in 2005. I would not go into that. It's not an investor presentation, but this is the case with. And so few days back, someone was telling me there's a brand that sells white shirts and has a top line of 1,500 crores. So India is just a humongous country, and a lot of people are now moving towards brands. A lot of people are now moving towards premium products. Happy to pay premium also for quality products and so on. So many of these things that are getting established today are going to easily compound at 15, 20, 25%. And I think if someone can have those kinds of holding periods, that'll be humongous.
So, in closing this session, since today we are in a mood to predict, so what's your short, concise prediction for the next decade, 2 decades, or 2047 period? What is your prediction? What are you willing to bet on?
Okay, so one thing that I see happening a lot, and I have a myopic view because I generally speak to more entrepreneurs which are kind of doing things similar to what I do. So not a top-down view, but in D2C, so what I see happening is when it came to creating new products and taking to the customers, it used to be a prerogative of HUL, ITC, and a lot of these behemoths who had monopoly over marketing and distribution. So the marketing essentially would mean that, okay, so if you were to create a new product, then television was the only way for you to market at scale. And that scale would actually provide you efficiency earlier, let's say 10 years, 15 years back. Now that monopolization is kind of broken by internet, where you can actually reach out to customers one person at a time. It's a unicast medium as opposed to a broadcast medium. So using Facebook, using Google, you can actually reach out to those 100 people who are going to buy from you without having to go to TV. And the second is distribution. I believe a lot of categories, a lot of products would eventually require both online and offline. But going to, let's say, 100 crore or 200 crore revenues while staying only online and doing that market validation, doing that product iteration, etc. is now possible, which again earlier was not possible. So earlier, 20 years back or 15 years back, no one could believe that they could actually create a yogurt brand unless they are HUL or ITC, where they would actually decide that we'll create a yogurt brand and then market it so much, market it and distribute it. So I think what is going to happen over the next 15 to 20 years is people are going to come up with more and more interesting product offerings. They would have the ways to reach out to first 1% or 2% of their customers in a very, very sharp fashion, in a very, very efficient fashion. And after that, of course, whatever scales or wherever there's a fit would scale, whatever is not fit would not scale, but we will see an army of people or army of new age brands. It's happening. If you look at sleep solutions, let's say mattress, etc. For 30 years, no new brand came, and suddenly we have WakeFit and Sleep Company, two of the brands which are very new. We look at luggage space, dead space, right? No one thought there's anything. You want a luggage, go buy VIP was however always grow. Now there is a company called Mokobar, and they are not the only one. There are 3 more who are following, and that's the case with almost every product category in the country.
I agree with everything he said, but just to add to that, I think in the main difference I believe on next 10 to 15 years will be, see, last 10, 15 years, most of the companies, they are in some ways, derivative of what was already working in US or China. Some of the entrepreneurs saw that, brought it to India. Obviously, we had to do a lot of heavy lifting of making it work in Indian context, which was very different, which we found out much later after getting the game. But I think in next 10 to 15 years, we'll see a lot of deep tech companies come out of that. India will start to do a lot of real tech, innovation. And I'm also just share an example, from first-hand experience. 6 years ago, I invested in a rocket company, Skyroot. These are engineers out of ISRO, reach out to me saying they want to build rockets, and no VC was willing to talk to them at that time. I mean, they sound like very, very sincere, committed people. So I invested. They stayed in the game, and last year they became the first private space company with a successful launch. There is, Pixel. There is, Aether, which is pioneered EVs, that people building vertical takeoff landing. But some of the new things I am working on, I'm also like just betting, in this area. I really do think that India will see genuine new technology which is created in the context of India, and that is probably everything in D2C brand is saying is 100% going to happen. There's no question about it. But this will also be part of, I think, the startup story.
So thank you, Gaurav and Mukesh.